Welcome to Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull. Breathe California is the lung health organization for the state of California. Last year, this chapter helped 150,000 people with breathing difficulties just in Santa Clara County. But today we're going to talk about preventing damage to your lungs. Almost everybody knows that electric cars reduce pollution significantly, and what you may not know is the electric bus is here. We're going to be talking with our frequent guest, Bob Garzee, automotive expert, in 30 seconds, and you'll hear that there's a good chance of getting rid of all of that really horrible diesel by replacing it with electricity. See you in 30 seconds.
It's given me a chance to go out and be with people who has the same problem. And it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer. If you ever get a chance, we could use your help. Volunteers are a major part of what Breathe California is out trying to do, give you a healthier set of lungs. Today we're talking about electric vehicles. Bob Garzee has been a frequent guest on this show with a wide variety of clean vehicles, and he's been working very hard on electric buses. Welcome.
Good to be here, Terry, especially with Breathe California, because you have done such a wonderful job with the cigarette problem, and now I think you've got it under control, in my opinion. But one of the places that is a big issue is vehicles, and vehicles that make lots of pollution. And so we are working on a project, and has now for 4 years of the 8 years we've been here, which is to help cars and buses to be less emission prone. Breathe California really knows how to do that.
We'll talk about vehicles a little bit. When we passed the Clean Air Act, everybody thought it was factories, and we've done a good job. Who is the air pollution problem now?
Well,
or what is?
The manufacturers of the vehicles focused on speed and capability in carrying product, but they hadn't spent much time on looking at the emission reduction. And that's why we brought in Breathe California with Silicon Valley Clean Cities, which we head up the two. And then we have a group which is called the Electric Transportation Development Center. And what they do is they all work together to work with Silicon Valley technology to make vehicles cleaner. And now we're getting to work on buses, and it's primarily school buses.
So the first time I met you, it was a real eye-opener. You brought in some charts like the one that I failed to put up during the first ad. We'll see it after the second one. Because everybody knows this is the high-tech center of the world, that electronics clearly were the start, but bioengineering and 3/4 of the world's investment in alternative energy and energy conservation is occurring here. But I didn't realize that that meant that we were the dominant center on automotive, meaning vehicle research.
Well, our ETDC, Electronic Transportation Development Center, which is part of the team, really understands that. And we now know that people don't like the emissions that school buses put out for our children. So we got the opportunity to work on a real big vehicle, which is called a school bus, 40 feet long.
Well, let me interrupt you here, because everybody knows how terrible those emissions are, but tell us what type of fuel they're using and what's happening as a result of that.
There's 500,000 school buses in America. Many of those are big school buses that use a lot of fuel. Typically 40-foot school buses that carry 85 to 89 students, sometimes less, but those are the ones that are really
And what fuel are they using?
Well, they're all using diesel. And everybody says, oh my gosh, gasoline prices are going down, but diesel is not going down as severely. And so one of their problems in schools is cost, is how do you afford to run those buses? And it's important that you have a solution, and we believe the project is done with electricity.
Well, I want to dive in here and just point out from an air quality standpoint, diesel is the devil incarnate.
Yes.
70% of the damage being done to our lungs from toxics is diesel fuel. And you're talking about it happening right next to young lungs, which are far more susceptible to damage than an adult's lungs.
Yeah, and the videos that we've done as part of this project, the solution, shows how much emission there comes from a diesel bus. And we believe we've gotten that down to just about 10% of that, a total amount, both in the cost and in the emission level. And Breathe is such a good partner in that project.
Well, since you mentioned the video, you brought some show and tell for us. Why don't you tell the audience what's about to run?
Well, we did 4 videos, and this is one of my favorite because the Department of Energy put out a national video on our project here in Silicon Valley and did it across the United States, and that just came out on the 20th of December. And we would like people to be aware that Silicon Valley has come up with a solution that's got national recognition, and that's why we'd like you to see that video up front.
So here it is.
Our success story this week takes us to California's Gilroy Unified School District and a first-of-its-kind Zero Emission Squared school bus project. Using a team of companies, including Odamani Electric, they converted a diesel school bus to electric power where solar panels will be used to help charge it up. With a payback of only 6 years, this approach could cut operating costs for school bus fleets nationwide.
That bus that we're riding on is equivalent to 57 to 84 mothers or fathers driving and taking their kids to school in the morning and picking them up at night.
The Silicon Valley Clean Cities Coalition has also placed 57 Think EV cars in Bay Area cities. They were a gold sponsor of the world's largest gathering of electric vehicles, where 507 EVs paraded down the streets of Cupertino, California to set a Guinness World Record. Now that's electrifying.
So I hope you enjoyed that video. This has been a real big deal for us. We had a kickoff press conference with Bob and key officials in both the city and school district involved with it. And people may not realize air pollution gets worse in hot air the farther it travels. And so southern San Jose, Morgan Hill, Gilroy are the worst spots in the Bay Area, along with Livermore and Pleasanton. So how's that project going?
Well, one of the things that you get criticism on when you do electric vehicles is everybody says, well, yeah, those are zero emission. But when they talk further, they say, but when you make the electricity, depending on the type of fuel you use to do that, it is very dirty. And that's where Breathe California has come together with our technology people and said if we could affect the technology of making fuel at the same time of building vehicles to reduce the emission level, we'd really have something. And so we have a project which is just finishing up in Gilroy. It's called Zero Emission Squared, and it addresses both the factor of making the fuel, which is electricity, and making the vehicles, which we brought in 7 different companies in Silicon Valley to work together to make that happen.
So talk a little bit about how you're fueling, maybe that's not the best term, an electric vehicle.
That's good. Can you put that busy chart up? And because it is a very busy project with you have 8 different companies, and this helps explain it. We had to find a bus builder that knew how to build a bus. And we did this under the Health Trust grant.
So let me interrupt because
Yeah.
I'm startled that we have to invent it, that we have to put it together. There just wasn't a marketplace for the electric bus, so that any vehicle manufacturer hadn't put it together?
Well, one of the problems of buses are they're very large.
Yeah.
And that requires energy in the batteries. The nice thing about the school bus is it runs in the morning until about 8:30, and it sits in the yard until probably 2:30, and then it goes back out again, and then it sits in the yard all night long till the next morning. Well, that keeps the range down to a minimum, where if you're doing a transit bus, that bus would be out there running all the time. That makes it difficult to do from an electric standpoint. So we did this, and we brought in that company. We brought in another company called CH Reynolds, which is one of the largest women-owned companies here in Silicon Valley that makes fuel. Fuel meaning electricity. They make it for buildings. They use solar. They really understand how to put that together. So you put those two together, the bus company and the power management company, and then you put in solar over the schoolyard, which makes the electricity during the daytime.
This is the most, so let's just walk through this and
Yes.
we'll get back to this. So
Sure.
You've got a line of buses,
Right.
you've got solar generation of electricity on
Yes,
the roof,
right.
and it's feeding into them to recharge the batteries from the morning.
That's right. And in many cases, it's giving the power company the fuel they need to make the electricity, because it's providing them electricity. And that's their worst time of day because it's hot, they've got other people using it.
And vice versa, it's probably the highest generation period in terms of the intensity of the sun.
That's right. And by the way, the buses only run 5 days a week, 4.5, 5 hours a day, only 9 months of the year. But the solar works all the time, and it's generating all this energy. So we've called this zero emission squared.
Yeah.
And we think it's very cost effective, and it certainly makes a difference on the emission level to the valley. And we believe that Silicon Valley has the solution to make that happen across the United States.
Obviously, as you stated earlier, buses need a lot of energy. What kind of range are you able to get for the buses?
Well, the one we have running today in Gilroy, which we've finished building, and we want to show as many schools as possible, so that's why we'd like schools to get in touch with us, is a bus that runs 45 miles a day.
And I might add that's farther range than Leaf, a much smaller car.
Sure. And some schools run more than that, but the company we put this together with has a 80-mile bus and a 100-mile bus. Depending on what you have to solve, you can put that in. And the neat part about it, Terry, is that it's a kit. You don't have to go throw your buses away if you don't want to. You can take the buses you already have and add the electric kit and the solar charging to it. So you're not starting from scratch. The other big thing we're concerned about is the mechanics in all those school districts. The unions are really concerned, and they should be, that what happens, all of these mechanics are no longer employable. Well, we put in a school training program so that they can go to school. So they already know 90% of the bus. The part that we've changed, we send them to school and teach them. And now they're ready to basically support the technology. We put in financing because we believe that you don't want to be taking money out of the teachers' pockets and out of the school pocket to pay for this. So we found a very large company that puts in the financing so that they get paid back out of the savings of the fuel, which is significant. I mean, it comes down from $3.20 a gallon down to about 60 cents a gallon. Tremendous savings. And not only that, it's clean. So they get paid back out of the financing. So that allows you to move forward without having to break the bank of the school district. And that is really important.
Yeah, you've pointed one thing. The average person knows there's energy going in, but the comparison is critical. You know, I've been looking at getting an all-electric car myself, and they're typically, EPA has calculated, they're at 115, 120 miles per gallon, about 3 times as good as my Prius is now. So the electricity is a great deal. And the sounds like the cost is substantially less than buying diesel fuel.
It really is, and Shell Oil made an announcement the other day. They think it's going to go back up to gasoline. It's going to go back up to $5 a gallon in 2016. So this little help we're getting is temporary, But this really makes a difference in cost. And if you can reduce your emissions and you can reduce your cost, now all those school buses can be out there running. Because right now, a lot of cities are cutting back because they can't afford it. But by bringing in 8 companies and having them work together in Silicon Valley, we've done something that this valley's done many times. We've come up with an innovation that can be used across the country. And we were so pleased that the Department of Energy and Motor Week magazine recognized us as a place where this could get done.
So this is solely my surmise, but the savings on the prices that we have had for gas are so enormous by going to electricity. I bet you it's still cheaper than gas, meaning the fuel costs for an electric car compared to gasoline, but the savings here are pretty obvious.
In our grant book that we have done, we are estimating that we'll be around 60 cents a gallon equivalent. Well, that's a lot less than $2 a gallon equivalent. So there is a tremendous savings in the approach we're using with technology and the kinds of organizations that have come together to make this happen.
So we've been talking with Bob Garzee of the Green Team, part of the Clean Cities program. We may get him to explain that after we see these 30-second public service announcement.
The nice thing about Better Breathers Club is we go in and there's other people sitting around with oxygen. It's almost a relief that everybody looks the same in the room. It's a funny thing to say, but it's a good feeling. Breathe California means having resources available to us that will help guide us and make our lives easier.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. My name is Terry Trumbull. Our guest is a regular guest, Bob Garzee. Perhaps you can explain all of this gibberish of names. Your name tag says Green Team. You're with the Clean Cities program, which is part of Breathe California, or at least administered by. So who are all those guys?
Well, we named the Green Team as a quick definition of what we do. But we have Breathe California, which is emissions focused. We have Silicon Valley Clean Cities, which is fuel focused and is the Department of Energy. And then we have the Electronic Transportation Development Center. Well, that's kind of a big mouthful, so we just refer to it as the Green Team. And each organization has its own purpose. We like to do a lot of education. We've worked with cars, as you saw in the video, to show we could do that. And now the most exciting one is the buses. And the 7 companies that are brought forward have technical expertise and in many cases financial expertise, because what you can't do is you can't break an industry. They have to be able to afford to do what they're doing. And we came up with a team of 14 reasons why we could reduce the cost of doing what we're doing for the school district. So that means they can actually implement it.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned in the earlier program harkened back to a program you and I did, which is you started a auto mechanics, and when I say auto, I mean vehicles in general, program to train people to work with electrical engines.
Yes.
And that's a big part of alleviating the concerns that you had or school district might have with unions with gasoline-powered engine mechanics.
It's really very exciting because most diesel mechanics don't believe electric's any good.
Yeah.
But once they get a chance to ride in a car that goes very fast, has lots of torque, 700-800 horsepower, that's all electric, they say, maybe that's something we should look into. And then what we do is we teach them in a class at De Anza College on how to learn to use electric. First of all, without hurting themselves, because you can. And second of all, how not to hurt the vehicle.
Well, I have to tell you that anybody that wants a hot, immediate response car ought to buy electric, because power is available there quickly. I won't mention his name, but a very famous local person picked me up at the airport about 10 years ago, and he said, You won't believe how fast this thing goes. We got on at the airport, and before we exited on 87 on Julian, he'd gone 109 miles an hour.
Yeah, Rod Dearden.
I have no idea who the person was. I've completely
Well,
forgotten.
he told me the story too, and
Well,
now
might be, but
we
I'm
work with him.
Sure, Rod would never have even thought of doing anything.
well, he's a great guy, and he really understands the industry.
So I think it's worth doing something that's obvious to you and I. We've got a power plant. We're using natural gas here at a Calpine plant in the north end of Coyote Valley to make electricity. Why is that a better deal to make electricity and put it into a car than just to burn diesel fuel in a school bus?
Well, that's the criticism we get is sometimes they say, well, depending on what you use to make electricity, it makes a lot more pollution. And we know that natural gas has less emissions than, say, coal or fuel oil. And so what we try to do in the places that make sense, and this valley does, Silicon Valley has a really low contribution of emissions because of making electricity. And so it's a great place to demonstrate that not only can you make the vehicle, everybody agrees that you can make zero emission, but on the other side you can make the fuel, which is electricity, using solar and other things like wind power that make it easy to produce without making the emission level go up. So what you do is get the best of both worlds, and I am just really encouraging our viewing audience to talk to their school districts about why this is such a good idea for the school system.
Well, particularly because schools in this area have been sensational. We've given clean air awards to Milpitas and I think the East Side
Yes.
School District here in San Jose for going to solar.
Yes,
And it's hard to
right.
find a school where you're not. It was so bad that when the Santa Clara Valley Water District put solar up for part of their parking lot, they were having fights over people wanting to park there because it was so much cooler than being out on the regular pavement. So it's pretty significant.
Well, and when you only have 4 hours of time in the yard, people are not aware of how much energy you can produce with solar, not on the top of the buses, but there to support the bus charging. And boy, I'll tell you, the electric utilities love that help that they're getting. And they're going out of their way to come up with financing to make that possible.
So another thing I just wanted to talk about is kind of like the comparison. Sure, gas prices are lower now, but it's still cheaper to use electricity if you're in a regular car, and immensely so for a school district with an electric
Yeah.
bus. But the same's true on emissions. Your car, your catalytic converter and your cleanup system, and I don't even know what kind of diesel cleanup equipment they have like a car does, but it is so inefficient compared to a power plant. You know, a natural gas power plant, it's clean fuel for fossil fuel, but they're getting like 99.6% the emissions out. And the numbers I'm hearing on cars is, you know, we're wasting energy galore, that we're only collecting 5 to 10% of the energy, most of it's being lost. It's just so inefficient compared to a large factory spot like a power plant.
Well, the thing that's important to know is that gas prices are going down, which is great for everybody, but diesel prices are not dropping anywhere near what the gas prices are. And most of these big buses are using diesel, and they only get 5 to 6 miles to gallon. And so when a lot of the diesels have what they call scrubbers on them that you plug in during the day to clean that fuel up, well, you don't even need those anymore.
Yeah.
And the maintenance is only 10% of what the maintenance used to be on that diesel bus. And that, you start adding those up, and it really makes a difference.
Yeah, that's, because when I hear scrubbers, maybe because I've done too much stationary source work, you know, like factories, I think of electrostatic precipitators or scrubbers that use a ton of electricity. And you've already
Yeah.
pointed out, during the day is not when you want to draw on electricity. If you want to use electricity, it's got to be, between 3 and 5 a.m.
So I think what you're finding is we've got a group of team companies in Silicon Valley that understand the school bus industry, are working together in the certain areas that have to be added up, and you get a synergy of solutions that we're bringing forward, and we're just so pleased that the Department of Energy recognized our efforts here in Silicon Valley, because we think we can really make a difference.
So you got about 10 seconds. Any grand conclusion other than the one you just gave me?
Just don't doubt it, try it. When we got a bus that's done, it's signed off by the Highway Patrol, it's only 32 miles away from here, and we've had it in a few events. We want you to ride it. Please do.
So electric vehicles work, whether for your car or for business or uses like a school bus. Next week, we're going to be talking with Barbara O'Neill, an expert. She's going to talk to us about how air pollution is being improved, but we've got a lot more left to do. See you then.